Whoopsie. What?
Get the cameras ready.
That would be a good photo, right? Okay, no, I'm not going to do that.
You can stay later. If you want to go swim later, you're welcome to stay. Yeah, you're all welcome to stay longer if you. So again, welcome. Thanks for being here. I thought I might be asked why am I supporting Rebecca? So given that I'm an engineer, I don't like to leave things up to chance. I'm a Boy Scout, so be prepared. So I jotted down a few things that I would just mention.
Should I sit down?
It'll
No.
keep me on track. This will be shorter. I won't ramble on. But as I mentioned, we're all here to listen to Rebecca. So I just want to say a couple things why I'm supporting Rebecca to be the next governor of Minnesota. And also, I believe that we can learn from history. So I got a short story, and then just a couple important quotes I think that describe Rebecca. So, and it's about a dozen. This is my short story. So about a dozen years ago, Becky, we got Rebecca, and then we got another Rebecca, Becky. Becky and I were in St. Paul at a gathering just like this, pretty close, and we were listening to Senator George McGovern talk about the Iraq War and how we were in a huge mess there. And Becky and we asked Senator McGovern how it was that the American people had re-elected President Bush in 2004 when it seemed pretty clear to a lot of us that we were kind of on the wrong track. And what he said then was things were not bad enough yet. meaning that the consequences of the Bush presidency were not seen or understood by enough people when there was still time to change course. So today, our world faces even bigger challenges, which require urgent attention. And here in Minnesota, we need to do our part to be part of that solution. And I believe that Rebecca is the right person to lead Minnesota as the next governor. A couple other points from history, and I think again these words are from three great Americans that I think Rebecca's life illustrates. These things and the values that she holds. So go way back. Talk about here's something from George Washington. So again, this is I'm almost done.
Way back.
But George Washington reminds us that our leaders must keep alive that little spark of fire called conscience. Eleanor Roosevelt reminds us, and if you've been watching the last few weeks on PBS, they've had a series on the Roosevelts. So Eleanor reminds us that we all create the person we become through the choices that we make each day. And so, and this last one, I think is a really good message for us here today. This is from Rosalind Carter. She says, a leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but where they ought to be. And so I think, conscience, hard choices, and where we ought to be are why we need Rebecca Otto as our governor. I guess, thanks for being here, and if you can, thank you all for your contributions, and if you can reach a little bit deeper as you go out the door, then please leave another donation. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, John. Now Shelley's here. Is there a spot we can have her sit so she doesn't have to stand? All right, here you go. We got a chair for you.
Oh, Sean, you can sit.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah, please come. Here you go. So I first want to make sure that I recognize the entire host committee. It's only a list of 1,000 people. I'm just kidding. John and Becky Siegmeyer, Bill Eggers, longtime activist out here. Thank you. Jim and Karen Fitzpatrick, George Gorbatenko, Mary, where'd you go? Mary Hauser, right over here. Mary Ann and Jerry Linzer, there they are right there. Jim and Nancy Malkowski over here. There, oh, you got split up. Dan Parnell. Oh, there's Dan. And then Jean and Jeff Sionis. Oh, they're not here. Oh, they're not here. Okay.
Oh.
So, they dropped off the wine. Oh, they brought the wine. That's all we needed, right? There you go. So I'm.
You forgot us.
Oh. tell you how happy I am to have Elizabeth here today. Because
Elizabeth.
that's who we work for. And that's who gives us inspiration to do the very best that we can do. So I'm so thankful that you're here today. Are you 5?
I'm 4.
Oh, she's 4. Are you soon to be 5?
Yeah.
Good. All right, well that's so nice you're here. Thank you. All right, so I'm Rebecca Otto, the state auditor. And I decided in January, announced in January, that I was running for the governor of Minnesota. And I would not do this if I could not win. And I would not run if I didn't believe I have the right skill set to do good things for our state moving forward. We're in very, very interesting times. And so several of us got to visit before I started. Politics is always in the timing. It has to be the right person at the right time. What I would like to do briefly is tell you a little bit more about me in terms of where I've come from, my life experiences, and how they will inform my work as governor of Minnesota. I think I owe that to you because I'm asking you for a very, very important job. And I just have to say, looking around, it feels like you're all family to me. I've known so many of you for so many years, and you've helped me in every race I've ever had. And I can't tell you how grateful I am that you have done that, because none of us do this work alone. So, a lot of you have known me for a long time, but you don't know me. It's true. So here we go. So when I actually was born in Southern California. I know that's a real shock. It's okay, keep breathing. And because you don't get to choose where you're born. But we were born in Southern California. There were 4 children in my family. I was the second oldest child. And when I was 6 years old, my father left. So my mom had the job of trying to raise 4 small children on her own. And I always say it was trying to keep a roof over our head, food on the table, and clothes on our back. And somehow she did it. I know that it wasn't easy. But what I learned from that experience is that anyone can run into a bump in life, but that we can be extraordinarily resilient. And that we usually get a help from others, a hand from others to get through this thing that we call life. We normally don't do any of it alone. It's always someone's helped us along the way. And so when I was 11, my mom remarried. So we moved to the Chicago area. So I got into the Midwest, I got closer. And my stepfather was a musician, my mom was a musician. They were both in the musicians union. So I have a union family. And when I was 13, my father back in California passed away. So he passed away because he had suffered from chemical dependency issues. So as your governor, I am going to make sure that when Minnesotans need chemical dependency treatment or mental health care, that we make sure they have it when they need it. Having lived through that, I do know the impact that all of that has on families and children, and so that's part of something that government needs to make sure is there and available. So when I was 14, I've been through a little bit in my childhood. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, sent me to camp. And the camp took me to Minnesota Boundary Waters. Some of you heard my story before. So it took me to northern Minnesota, and it was a camp, and I got to go on a canoe trip in the Boundary Waters canoe area if I could carry this 75-pound drum in 100 yards. I think a lot of you have been through the drill. And so everyone knows the story because we're like, oh yeah, I had to do that too. By yourself, not assisted. And I did it. And I got to go on this 10-day trip in the Boundary Waters canoe area, and it changed my life. It was a pivotal moment in my life. And what I learned was that I was stronger physically than I ever knew, but I also learned that I needed wild, wide open spaces to process my life and to work through questions and struggles. And so the Boundary Waters canoe area is not only an international treasure, but it's a Minnesota treasure. And as your governor, I will always protect the Boundary Waters canoe area because it is So when I decided to go to college in St. Paul, so I went to McAllister College because I'd found my home, the place that really changed my life. And I later met Sean, my husband, so then I found my family. And we decided to start a business before we got married. and Sean had $500, and so we ended up. I know. I didn't marry him for his money. It's okay. Still loved him. So we were going to start this business, and it was a lot of elbow grease, and we actually went door to door. So that's why I'm good at politics. And we built that business up to 50 employees. We later sold it. And the reason why we were able to be successful with $500 is because there was a local business, Abbott Paint and Carpet, who took a chance on us. We didn't have assets, we didn't have money, but they took a chance on the autos. We were almost autos at that point. And allowed us to build a pretty extraordinary life. And so again, we don't do this thing called life alone. And I wanted to give back in a meaningful way because I had actually received great gifts from this state. And so I got a Master's of Education from the University of Minnesota. A great research institution, and I ended up teaching in the public schools, Mounds View Schools, 7th grade life science for 5 years. Yay. There's always some eyebrows that go up, because if you can teach 195 12 and 13-year-olds every day, you can do anything. It's true, and I love those kids. They were really extraordinary. So science is really important to me, and as your governor, my policy making and my decision making will be evidence-based.
Wow.
No alternate facts?
What a
No
concept.
alternate facts. They drive me crazy. They're just, Anyway, we're going to get through this. We will get through this. So, after business, I wanted to be home with our son, Jake, who just graduated from Hamlin. And so I chaired a successful $52 million operating levy referendum in the Forest Lake schools. And let's just say they're not really crazy about taxes. And these levies had failed in the past. And we got it done just talking about what our values were. It was all about what our values were. We wanted kids on safe buses, so we wanted to replace them regularly. We wanted our kindergartners to go to school 5 days a week rather than just 3 days a week, because we knew it wouldn't be a good experience for them. We didn't want kids walking to school on these 55-mile-an-hour roads with no sidewalks, because we weren't going to put our kids' lives in peril. So we got the levy through. They elected me to school board. I was asked to run for state rep by Mindy Greiling, if any of you remember her. She recruited me, actually. She's a great legislator. And we ran, now this is where a lot of you know me from, is we ran in that district where Michelle Bachmann was active in the Senate. I know, remember? And the thing is, Democrats really didn't win out here. It was out here, because it was very conservative. But you know, I ran on bringing balance and reason back to the process and getting back to long-term financial planning. And out here, that's sexy. No, it's serious. Because, you know, and some people said, well, wow, you're kind of different for a Democrat that you want to do long-term financial planning. And I said, it's what we must do, because it'll allow for better outcomes. So we won February 11th of 2003 in that very difficult district after Paul Wellstone's plane had gone down. We'd lost Paul. And the Democrats had gone into the major minority in the House, and it wasn't a good time to be a Democrat. We won by putting our hearts and our heads together and our knuckles together on those doors, and we won by 11 points. 11 points. So, I was later asked to run for state auditor by Arnie Carlson, who was a 3-term state auditor and a 2-term governor. And he did a lot of good things for the state of Minnesota. I went to Mark Dayton, who was a U.S. Senator at the time, and I said, so Mark, I said, should I run? And he said, Rebecca. He said, you're an Otto, and she's an Anderson, and this is Minnesota. And Otto can't beat an Anderson, and I said, really? Then I said, yeah, watch. So we won by the largest margin in 112 years against an incumbent state auditor. So yes, so that's so what's really, and again, it's from your help. So what's really extraordinary is I was the first woman Democrat to ever be elected to that office. I'm the only Democrat to ever be, I'm the only Democrat I know to ever be reelected to that office. No Democrat ever has. And so I'm in my 3rd term, currently my 3rd term. So part of running for governor in the state of Minnesota is you need to be electable. And I've been vetted and tested and vetted and tested. And Minnesotans trust me, and they like my integrity. And when I ran for state auditor, I didn't demonize the current state auditor. I just said, I'm running to make sure the numbers add up. Minnesotans want integrity in their government. And regardless of party, it was running on values. We want to make sure the numbers add up in government so we can trust our government. And so here I am today. So I decided in January that I was running for governor. And it's a really big decision. And Sean's very supportive. Our son Jake is very supportive. And I'm running to end what I'm calling the politics of greed. And I want to get back to the politics of the people that serves the people and gets at our values and our interests. The politics of greed says that all taxes are bad and they must be slashed, that all regulation is bad and it must be repealed, that all government workers are bad and we must privatize all of our services, whether it's prisons, our roads, our airports, our parks, you name it, they want to privatize it. And you know, the politics of greed, it's good for the bottom line of big industry, but it runs over our interests most of the time. The reason I'm really concerned right now is that we have, between Citizens United and all the dark money that can pour into our campaigns, big industry has big money, and propaganda campaigns that they fund to try to get their way, whether it is, you name it. Fossil fuel industry, they're really good at running propaganda campaigns, and it's to try to impact the public sentiment about different things. So at the end of the day, there is something better, and it's called the politics of the people that gets back to our values and serves our interests. So I'm familiar with the politics of greed. Our founders understood it, and they actually put important protections in place to guard against it. The state auditor's office is one of those protections, and they attempted to privatize it. We are there to make sure government is transparent and accountable for you, and that if something goes wrong in any of our communities around the state in terms of them handling the money, it gets reported to us. Also, our government does a lot of contracting with business, so we have to make sure there's no cronyism, corruption, right? That it's a level playing field for the local businesses that are doing contracting with government, and so there's a reason why they don't want us there. And there's a reason why they don't want me doing my work, and that's because I'm willing to speak truth to power, and that I'm always there to do what's right, not what's politically expedient. So as you know, right now, I'm appealing to the Supreme Court on the privatization attempt of the office. I am very optimistic. We got a good ruling both at the District Court and the Court of Appeals in that they affirmed that auditing counties is a core function of this office. And they also are expanding our duties, which is interesting. But I took an oath to make sure that I protect the Constitution. And this is a constitutional office, it belongs to you, it protects you, and I've seen other states where this has been diminished, and it's ugly. And the money leaks all over the place, and there's cronyism and corruption, so I'll continue to fight for that, and as your governor, I will always work to do what's right, not what's politically expedient. Now, some people say, well, can you win? So Minnesotans know me. I've worked with local governments around the state now for 11 years, and I also have worked with volunteer firefighters, so they know me. I'm not new, I'm not a new commodity. But the governor's job is to not only, I'm going to come out with a statewide vision. A vision is the place we want to get to. It's what do we want to look like in the next decade, and what do we need to do to get there? So when you have a really strong, compelling vision that you share with Minnesotans around the state, and you get 60 or 70% of Minnesotans to agree, it's going to help all the other candidates that we're going to get elected into the House, because we've got to change the makeup of the House right now so we get back to the business of the people. So my vision is going to be economic-based, because I know that after traveling the state, I held listening sessions around the state starting in January. I asked Minnesotans what their hopes and dreams were, but I also asked them what their concerns and struggles were, and I found the people who didn't vote. We had 180,000 Minnesotans not vote in the last presidential election. You know what they told me? They said, you know what, it was economic desperation. The system is not working for them, they're undercompensated, there's a lot of employers that are undercompensating people, and they want their lives to improve. So some of them said, look, the system's not working, and they feel like there's a lot of big money in it, and they really love Bernie Sanders. And they just didn't vote. Now, when they told me at my listening sessions, they whispered in my ear because they didn't want people in the room to know they didn't vote. They said they were going to vote this time, but they also told me they were excited about my candidacy, and so they don't want any anointments in the party process. So we'd be very, very careful to make sure that people feel it's been a fair process. That's one. Two, I had a listening session up in Bemidji that someone put together for me. I found out after it was done that 75% of the attendees voted for Donald Trump.
Wow.
They were nice to me. They were. We had this really great community conversation about what our hopes and dreams were, what the struggles were. There's a big opioid epidemic going on up in the Bemidji area. And I'll tell you what, there was a school teacher, a 7th grade school teacher, and she said to me afterwards, she got tears in her eyes, and she said, Rebecca, I love my job, and I want to help my kids be successful. But some of these kids have been exposed in utero, and it's impacting their development, and they can hardly sit still in the classroom. Some of them are banging their heads against the walls. She said, I just want to help these kids be successful, and I don't know how to help them. So we have teachers that are becoming overwhelmed. They're seeing more mental health issues with the children in the classroom. And so again, as I said, as governor, I will make sure that we have those mental health care services that we need, chemical dependencies services, because our future depends on it. And especially in our youngest Minnesotans, we have to make sure we're doing all that we can. And the opioid epidemic is a really serious issue. But some of the people that voted for Trump, it wasn't all racism, and it wasn't all hate, it was actually, again, economic desperation. So understanding that, my agenda is going to be economic based, and I'm going to come out with something that I think is extraordinarily exciting, that is going to not only diversify our economy, which is always a good idea. We've got, healthcare, we have tourism, we have, entertainment, and some other sectors, but we need to diversify. So it's really going to be around driving the clean energy economy. And we should be on the cutting edge of it. We should be on the cutting edge of the clean energy economy. So here's the deal. The price point is great now. So we are cheaper than coal in solar and even in some wind. Now, Sean and I designed and built a house years ago. We do have solar panels covering the roof. We've got a wind generator, geothermal heating and cooling, super insulated, all those things. We drive EV cars. We did it 23 years ago because we know innovation is important. As a state, we should be innovating. And when President Trump said that he was going to withdraw us from the Paris Climate Agreement, you know what we say? Yeah, you go ahead. We're going to dig in, and we're going to do everything we can to be a part of the solution. And so we will, as Minnesota, we should be leading the nation. Do you know we're way behind? Colorado's beating us. There's all these states that are now 100% renewable. We need to catch up, and then we need to exceed. And I always say to people, I want to have the R&D, I want to have the manufacturing, and I want to have the installation. I want to train workers. The Iron Range. There's economic desperation, there's poverty, and there's unemployment. All they want is meaningful work, regular meaningful work that you can raise a family on. And so this will be meaningful for the Iron Range and other communities that need some hope and some strong jobs. And so anyway, I always say, if you're a young person, if you had a choice, would you work for Tesla or would you work for, I don't know, Kia? You'd work for Tesla. Why? Because it's exciting, it's innovative, it is, they're pushing the envelope. And these cars are beautiful, they're fast, they're fun. Now, I drive a Chevy. It's a Chevy Volt. That's what I could afford. But I'm just saying, as a state, if we want to continue to attract that new generation of worker and keep them here, we need to be exciting and innovative and driving that envelope, because climate change is having real impacts on our farmers, on our government, lots of costs when we have these major weather events, when we have animals washing out of the zoo in Duluth. We have to admit that we have a problem. But we now have an economic opportunity that I'm going to make sure families can take advantage of, the government can take advantage of, the farms can take advantage of, in terms of reducing their energy costs over time. So that'll be coming out soon. Another really important piece that I learned as I traveled the state. So what keeps you up at night? Paying your bills and health care. So so we need to make sure that we get to a universal, affordable, quality, publicly financed healthcare system in Minnesota. And what I'm really excited about is that small business people, as I traveled the state, that was the one group that kept saying to me, the ACA did not work for us, the premiums are extraordinarily high. They said, Rebecca, if Minnesota, if we can get to a system like that, we'll be the innovation state in the nation, because businesses will flock here. Because I don't think it's going to happen at the federal level. It's probably not going to happen. So we will take it on as a state. I'll also push the federal level, because if they could fold up a bunch of programs, that would be most helpful, but I don't think it's going to happen, as we've seen. So, but that's another really important piece to our, to being strong economically and being a vibrant state. I think at this point, education. So we all know that education is it's a Minnesota value. We love our strong schools, and we are spending more time on pre-K. I was talking to a gentleman the other day who said, 80% of brain development happens between, the time you're born until you're 3. Yeah. So he really said we need to do all we can for those children that may end up having issues earlier, because that'll actually have a greater impact. But funding for our K-12 system still is an issue. That's actually why I got into politics in the first place, because we know that our intellectual capital has served us so very, very well over time. So we must work on the formula and make sure that no matter where a child lives in the state, that they have a strong education. Higher ed, we've got a generation for our public universities and MNSCU system where we have kids walking out with a mortgage and they have no home. And the ability to build wealth over time is going to be very difficult for them, and to me that's leaving a generation behind. So we must get at the cost issue for students in our colleges. Okay? So with that, 2018 is a super important election. There's going to be lots of dark money that's going to flow into our state. Because you know why they want our state? The Republican Party, they want our state because in 2020 they're going to be redistricting. And they want to gerrymander in a way that they're going to be able to lock it down for 10 years to pull off all the things they want to do for big industry. And my plea is first of all, I'm running, I can win, I'm willing to do this work, I need your help. Because my campaign is a grassroots campaign. I'm empowering the people of Minnesota to take back their government to make sure that we have a bright future, and our state is focused on our values, which is clean water, strong schools, Boundary Waters Canoe Area, making sure we take care of our own, that we care about the common good. So 2018 is going to be defined by the politics of unfettered greed, which serves the few, or the politics of the people that serves the many. And I ask you to join me in this very important fight for our future. Thank you.
Yay. You are right on.
Thank you. There's a lot more I could say, but I don't want to, that's probably enough. But I could take a few questions if anybody has questions, if they want me to clarify anything. Yes.
I've got a question. So, how, there's so much gridlock and the Republicans are, the issues. How do you work with them? Because do you need to work with the Republicans?
Yes, you do.
How do you get, these are all make sense.
Yep.
I can see people wanting to rally behind this, but then how do you actually get stuff done?
Okay, so I was really fortunate to have Arnie Carlson mentor me for some years. Arnie was a good governor.
Yep.
And Arnie taught me about the concept, and it's called managing the legislature. And managing the legislature is a really important job, and Tim Pawlenty was actually really good at it. I don't remember if you remember him as governor.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He taught Pawlenty, I'm quite sure, but he also taught me. And that is that, first of all, I'm not a transactional public servant, I'm a relational public servant. And so for me, it's about building relationships and figuring out what makes people tick. So I'll be relational with everybody. And meaning, like, figuring out what is it that makes them tick. When I was in the legislature, there was a guy who had 11 children. And I wanted to do something around reducing cancer in children, and it was arsenic-treated wood and playgrounds. So I went to him one day and I said, "You love children, right?" He said, "Of course I do." I said, "Would you help me with the bill?" He said, "Of course I will." I mean, so you figure out what it is, what they want to get done, and then you communicate regularly. So that's one piece. Another piece is this. You set your bright lines. Okay, I know more about you now, Greg. You want me to? Wouldn't that be fun? No.
Sean's like,
Actually, I did not know how close I was to the end.
how much do we have to donate?
You set your bright lines. So you'll say, there's just certain things off, out of boundaries. Like, I'm not compromising the Boundary Waters Canoe Area, or women get to choose. They have access to reproductive health care, and government doesn't get to tell them what to do.
Right.
Whatever those bright lines are, you set it, and then from there, if they cross it, you have your team, the DFL team, in committee. Pawlenty did this, and I watched it. He was very good at it. And they'll say, Governor Otto said that's a bright line. You can't cross it, and if you do, she'll veto that bill. So let's say they tuck it into the finance bills like they've been doing to Dayton.
Yep.
She's gonna veto it, and then I'll say, I'm gonna veto it, and then I veto it. That's how you do it. So Governor Carlson had the most vetoes of any governor in the history of Minnesota. However, he got a lot done too. And so it's just that management of, like, I mean what I say what I mean. Yeah. But then you find the areas, because everybody wants something generally. And I will admit, there are some people that have gotten into office who don't like government. They don't want it doing anything. They don't want it funded. They want it to fail. They're hard to work with.
Yeah.
They're hard to work with. But if I have a strong, compelling vision, it will impact who gets elected in the next election. And I will be a team player, and I will be there to help other candidates and help them understand how to message and to keep it economic. Because I'm telling you, the economic desperation I saw, that's what keeps people up at night. And if we don't focus on that, we lose. So those will be my bright lines, and I had a Republican come to one of my listening sessions. He was going to come, introduce me, and leave. It was held at his resort. And he said, Rebecca, I met you at the state fair years ago, and I was very impressed. I said, well, thank you so much. He stayed the whole time, and you know what he talked about? He said, we need single-payer health care. We can't keep doing this thing. So what I'm saying is that's why I know we're going to get work done, because this is not a DFL issue. It's a life or death issue for too many people. So, okay. Oh, thank you.
I caught a piece on NPR, maybe it's within a year. Anyway, it was about the preschool children and what an incredible difference that makes. The percentage of kids that get through high school is just, I don't know what it is. It's like 75% higher. It's just tremendous how much difference it makes. And he said, you can't put money in a better place as far as investing in getting the kids. I had a great grandson that go through preschool here, and it's just absolutely
Well, so even Art Rolnick understands the importance of investing in pre-K. And when I was in my master's program at the U, we saw all these brain images and of children who had the opportunity to, really to have that early education. And I knew what it was, so when our son was born, I did everything from day one in the hospital. I had him swaddled and I was reading to him. My mom looks at me, she goes, what are you doing, honey? His eyes aren't open. And I said, I am reading to him. And she said, well, yeah, that's good, but like, he was just born. And I said, yes, but I said, for brain development, I said they form much more complex synapses really early on by hearing language, hearing patterns, hearing. And so that's why they tell you, talk to your child as you put their socks on. Right now I'm putting on your right sock. Right now I'm putting on your left sock. Because we know that works. Not all children have that right now. Their parents may be working 2 and 3 jobs, and I was told around the state that's happening. What impact does that have on our children? There's a price. So that undercompensation and all those different things. So yes, early education is extraordinarily important. And I know that Governor Dayton and the legislature got in a pretty big battle and they got stuck. So we've made some investment, we could make more. I'm going to try to undo that by not going down the same path and doing something a little differently. But it is important that we do that, especially for our children that are at risk. They're the ones we must get to.
Does the funding for that depend on a levy being passed so that quality for not just the wealthy communities, they pass the levy, they can still have the funding for the public?
I'm sick and tired of levies, can I just tell you?
Well, I mean,
because not all communities are willing to pass those things. And so it's not the kids' fault. And in Forest Lake, it's really, really hard to get them through. And Jake was in drumline, and he competed, and I helped carry instruments, and we traveled around the state. We got to these beautiful school buildings in greater Minnesota, and I was like, how did they get that thing passed? They had to do a bond referendum. And I was envious and kind of sad. Because I don't, some communities have a really strong property tax base. Bloomington's got a great one, right? Forest Lake doesn't have a very strong property tax base. And so it ends up on homeowners. And if you're stretched at all financially, in terms of, staying in your home and everything else, you get cranky about those things. So I see inequities right now in our system. And I don't want inequities because I think that we're robbing our kids. So I want to continue to work on that, and I'll dig in. And every governor tries, but it's worth fighting for. And I would also say something else I saw in listening sessions I went to is that, I'll just thank you all for this. Some of the policies we have right now around grading our schools, sometimes they sound really good, but they're not. And so what's happened with our grading of the schools and giving them a score is that if you have some children who maybe struggle, maybe have a higher poverty rate, kids at risk, single parents, they may be struggling, and if the grades weren't very good, people move out that did have kids that had better scores, and so then you really start to concentrate the kids that aren't doing well. It is not a good situation, and I would contend that the scoring of these schools actually had unintended consequences for us, and we need to undo that.
Yay.
That's what I think. Yes, we really do.
Your election piece is very powerful. I think you should just briefly tell about how you did statewide in terms of electability.
Statewide in terms of my electability. So the first time we ran for state auditor, Otto against an Anderson incumbent. Okay, just largest margin in 112 years. I think it was 11 points that time. And then in the next re-election, And actually, that was my catch who ran for governor, and he lost. So we did not get the top of the ticket. I'm not a coattail race. I never have been. We've never run a race as a coattail race. So I thought maybe you want to come up with me. In the next re-election, it was a bad time for Democrats. So they were gunning for us and trying to take us out. And I still won, but it was a very difficult time, and they targeted me with $1 million trying to knock me out. They did not succeed. In my last re-election, you may know that I voted against some non-ferrous mineral leases back in 2013 on the executive council. Which created a whole storm. So non-ferrous mining, haven't done it in Minnesota, very dangerous for our water and our air. Our laws and rules are not set up for it. I'm deeply concerned about our water-rich environment up there. So I voted against some non-ferrous mineral leases on the executive councils, all constitutional officers. I'm the only one that ever has. Nobody else does. They all vote for him. And everywhere this mining has been done, the people who live there end up paying for cleanup costs. There's been a mess left every single time. We don't have money to do that. We need to invest in our schools and our infrastructure, you know, things that we hold so dear. So anyway, I had a campaign against me up north on the Iron Range, and it was called Dump Otto. It was really pretty orange signs. And what's really interesting, Jim, even after that, I won by the largest, I actually exceeded Congressman Nolan's margin of victory in 2014 on the Iron Range by 12 points.